Yo guys, Serum 2 is officially here. This is not a joke. This is not a prank. It is officially here. So this video is going to be more of a deep dive about Serum 2 specifically. Let's hop straight into it. We have no time to waste. So what you can gain from this video is understanding Serum on a different level. We're going to cover some of the differences between Serum 2 and Serum 1. And you're just going to learn how to use real sounds, okay? And make real sounds, not just a bunch of features. Firstly, when you get started, first habit is just to go to menu and initialize the preset. That will reset it back to a sawtooth. So let's go top left. Let's go left to right as if we're reading a book. I found that this is the easiest way. So if you go to where it says Serum 2 on the top left, you can change the sizing. So if your screen is super big, you can make this like 400%, or if it's super small, you can make it smaller so that it fits your actual screen because it is a bigger interface. Okay, nextly is this oscillators tab. This is where we begin to create the sound generating things. Okay, so if I turn on what's called Oscillator A, we begin to have a sound. Now I don't need to have Oscillator on to actually make a sound. I could use the noise, for example, which is just this environmental noise. Or I could just turn the filters on with the noise, send the noise through the filter and create, you know, a certain tone. Now this is not what I would do. I'm just, okay, and I can click the key tracking. So I'm just showing you guys, you don't always need an oscillator to make a noise, okay? So let's go back to Oscillator A. Actually, let's go to the sub-oscillator because this is important. The sub-oscillator is what can add density to your track. I'll even show you guys a really advanced technique you can use. So for example, let's say I want my sawtooth to sound really big, but then I want it to be super boomy at the bottom. So we want a sub-oscillator. Let's select this down to -2 octaves. So now when I play notes, it plays really low notes, and these really low notes will add that density, that fundamental frequency to our bigger chords. Now, most people leave it at that, and what they'll do is they'll add Oscillator A, and they'll play the sub with the oscillator. So you hear that sine wave underneath? Okay, that can become a problem. So one of the newer features, at least from my perspective, I haven't seen this ever before in Serum. Maybe I overlooked it, but it's called oscillator mapping. So in the bottom right here, if you click this edit button, you can edit the key range that triggers a different oscillator. So for example, for the sub, let's say we only want the sub to occur from like C1 range all the way down, which means our super low notes. Okay, so I can play these notes without triggering the sub. Let me turn the sub up so you guys can actually hear. Let's go up an octave just to make it super obvious. So that sound only triggers if I play the C1 range and below. If I play C2 and above, it does not trigger that sub oscillator. I'm playing all the top notes here. You guys can see with that yellow dot, it's not triggering that sub oscillator only until I get to the super low notes. That's important because your sub bass usually clashes with chords. So this is super key because now I could have a sub bass play and it actually stays in the range of a sub bass. Okay, so let's crank this up a little bit. And now let's add our Oscillator A. So now when I'm playing with my left hand, for example, you know, that sub kicks in. Let me make it more exaggerated so you guys can hear. Okay, square wave. Okay, so my right hand is a clean saw. But now my left hand has that sub, which adds that density and aggression to your sound. So that's going to change the way we think about sounds. We're going to think of it as layers. So that's something people don't realize with the sub oscillator. You don't always have to have it layered every single note of your keyboard. You can actually go to the oscillator mapping. So that is a very useful tool, and they have even more options, which I'm not going to cover all these, but you could also do velocity sensitive mapping. So this is more, I would say, for the multi-sample portion, which we'll get into later. Okay, so there's a lot of functionality just in that feature alone. So this takes Serum to a different level because now you have these complex layers across your keyboard that create different, you can create chords in the middle. You can have your top line play a whole different sound. Okay, so we might create a sound like that if we have enough time. Nextly, you can mess with the phase, which is offsetting the timing of your subwave. So if it's clashing with your main sound, you could always change what's called the phase. That will change what's called the starting time of your waveform. a little more advanced, more of a problem solving thing. Okay, so now we understand that. Let's go to, pardon me, the click this tab here, and we can send this sound different places. So where it says M, you would think this stood for mute. Okay, we could select this and we could send it to a filter. We could send it to what's called buses. So buses are like groups. Think of like a real school bus. Think of each oscillator as a kid that's getting on a school bus. So you could send this kid metaphorically to the school bus number 1, and that school bus will then take people to a school, and at the school they get processed a certain way, okay, and then they go back home basically. So that's what a bus is. It gathers things, okay. So we're not going to bust that just yet. I'll get into what a bus means later, but we can switch this to be a main output, meaning it's not affected by any processing, or we could send it through the filter, which will muffle the sound or do whatever the filter needs to do in that case. So let's reset this filter. Let's turn this back on, and let's select this. All right. So now we can have it go through filter 1, and now we have new filters. So this is an option here. We could turn on filter 2, which you could just change everything about it. So we could have this go through one or the other. And I believe you can modulate this. So let's select an LFO, for example. So now your sound is morphing between filter 1 and filter 2. So you can have it to where you have more resonance maybe. So now it's more like a movement and a talking type of sound. Okay, so that's just with the sub oscillator. Okay, and you click these little buttons here to turn off the routing into the filter. So again, you could do this from the top left and just select your filter. And you could even right click to modulate this amount. So it gets very deep. Again, I'm kind of showing you a bunch of features and a bunch of stuff ahead of the curve, but there's so much you could do just with the sub oscillator alone. Next, let's go to the real new update, which this makes Serum so good. Serum is now not only Serum, it's Omnisphere, it's Pigments, it is now basically Analog Lab. It's basically every plugin that we love in one. And I think this is the best way to make synthesis easy to understand. This is definitely the best interface, the best user experience, hands down, Serum 2. Okay, so there are fine differences between each plugin, but Serum basically can do everything now. Okay, so if you click where it says Oscillator A, we can switch between the modes. So some of the modes you guys might be familiar with are the wavetables. If you don't know what a wavetable is, a wavetable, if you click here on the wave, usually your preset is a wavetable. And a wavetable has what are called frames. So frames, it's almost like me standing right here, and then me being over here, and then me being over here, and then me being over here. I'm just like changing positions in every picture. So the same thing with your wavetable. And also too, you guys can find a bunch of wavetables online from different retro synths, so that it's basically captured multiple pictures of a retro synth over time, because it's a moving oscillation. It's not just a single shape that stays like this curvature. It can move over time. So in Serum, what we could do is left click to see all of the wavetables. And this is, again, the older way Serum used to have its dominance was through wavetable synthesis. So I could change what's called the wavetable position to get different waveforms. Now, where did these waveforms come from? They come from the wavetable. What is a wavetable? It contains different frames of different shapes. Now, you can get more deep with it by clicking this edit button, and you could actually see the shapes here. So these are all the different shapes. And basically what Serum's doing is moving between each frame as if it's a picture. So you can, kind of cycle between these if you want. So if I did that, for example, I could click what's called wavetable position. And now it's going through each of the shapes. So this is a preset called default shapes, which is the greatest starting point because you have access to all of the waveforms right away. Okay, so wavetable synthesis was the classic Serum approach. Okay, you could do really cool stuff. I don't want to, bore you guys to tears about everything about wavetable synthesis, but what's cool now is you can now have multi-sample. This changes the game in so many ways because now Serum becomes Contact, it becomes Omnisphere, it becomes Pigments. So what you can do here is click the drop down, go to factory. They have a ton of presets just by default without even you needing to install anything. So this is already fire that they have these. And these little lines that you guys see, these represent velocity layers and what's called key mapping. So the same thing when I went down to this oscillator mapping, I could have different things trigger at different octaves. The same thing with your multi-samples. These are programmed, what are called sound SFZ files. And basically these, turn this up. These are samples of recorded instruments or recorded synthesizers per velocity per note, okay, or however they decide to record. Okay, so basically you get a more defined sample. Instead of like a one shot, which is this one sample of one point in time, you could have, you know, 100 samples across different points in time and at different tunings. And that's the cool part of multi-samples. And this is what makes this so unique, is because not only is this a multi-sample loader, you can modulate it the same way you would a wavetable. That's what makes Serum way better than any synth on the market right now. If you don't have Serum, you are behind the game. I could definitely say that as a fact now. So Serum, for those who can't comprehend Serum, again, it's basically not, it's the Swiss Army knife, but now it's become the bazooka, the Swiss Army knife, the sniper. It's everything in one. It's insane. So now I can play guitar melodies right inside of Serum. Now I'm going to show you guys how I'd use this in real life. Down here, most people overlook this area. This is called the scale lock area. In order to activate this, we have to set what's called a key. So in this case, I'm going to set the key of, let's do G as the key, the root key, and then the scale here, let's select minor. We have a ton of different scales we could choose from, which is super fire. Let's go to where it says minor. So all a scale is a sequence of notes that somebody likes. That's basically what it is. Okay, so now it will lock, if I play MIDI into Serum, it will lock all of the notes I play into this specific key so you can't mess up. So I'm literally just gonna play any random notes. I'm not gonna worry about what notes I'm actually playing. It will auto lock it to the scale. So now you can quickly So now I can just kind of freestyle, and I know that for sure I'm going to be in G minor. Cool thing here too, you could also transpose this. So if you want to just quickly transpose what's called the semitone value, or basically you're just changing the key, you could transpose this up 3. So anytime you hit a note that's not in the key, it will trigger the closest note that's in the actual scale. So this helps people quickly come up with melodies without overly thinking. Now, is this going to be like a crutch to lean on? Not necessarily, because technically great melodies go out of key, but that's a different conversation. But the cool part is that you guys can now, let's put on the Arabian scale, for example, and let's start here at E, and let's pull it back to the tonic. And now we can do stuff that you normally just wouldn't do. Okay, so there's so many scales in here that you guys could just go crazy with this. So I'll just put it on the minor scale and keep it on E minor. Now, even on top of this, which I didn't mean to jump ahead here, but you can also go to what's called the arpeggio mode. Click on the ARP tab, turn the power mode on. And now I believe it's scale locks. I haven't tested this, but just off of theory, it should scale lock. Now, at first, I thought range automatically stood for what's called the octave. So basically, in older arpeggios, if you set this to 3, it would play whatever you're playing, and then it would play it up an octave, and then one more octave. But you have to set what's called a shift range. So let's set this to 12 semitones here. So see how it plays what I'm playing, but up 3 more octaves. So you have to set the shift amount and then the range. Okay, so I thought that wasn't working at first, but I was just doing it wrong. Okay, and then you can, slow down the timing here. So if you're going for, let's say you're going for a Timbaland type sound, you would go to Wavetable, Sawtooth, you would go to a triplet timing, like 1/64th, some kind of crazy amount. You would change your octave to 3 with 12 semitones. And now you get that Tom Ford, Jay-Z type. Okay, that's how you get that sound. You could also go up and down. But my favorite is just going upward usually. So that's how you get that weird sound. And I believe they have a repeat section here. Now, let me see here. All right, so just, okay, there we go. I have to let go of the key. All right, so repeats, I guess, repeat. I don't know how this actually works. So let's up the repeats. Let's see if it. So it doesn't look like it's following the octave jump. So again, there's so many features in here that I don't know how to use 100%. So I'm not going to sit here and try to teach you guys stuff I don't actually do. But they have some presets for you guys. And you could also trigger these arpeggios with different what are called key switches, which is basically the lower notes on your keyboard. Most people don't have an 88 key keyboard to trigger these, so you would have to do these inside of the piano roll. But you could also click on these to trigger out different arpeggios. This is for people who are, in my opinion, doing more of a long performance type mode, because normally I wouldn't switch up the arpeggios. Maybe you're doing something custom, but you know, that's more for performance in my opinion. Okay, so also the clip mode, which is right here in the new Serum, is basically like a great piano roll inside of Serum. So you could launch what are called clips. Think of these like patterns inside of FL Studio where you can create different notes and different MIDI sequences. It's the same exact thing. A little tedious in my opinion to create this way, but again, they have banks, and I'm sure people will create you know, projects where they have stuff built out for you. Now, the cool part about this clip mode is that you can drag in MIDI. So let me show you guys here. Let's drag in some MIDI from one of my folders here. Go to MIDI. I always lose my MIDI. Hold on, let me find it. All right, so we have some MIDI right here, and I could just drag and drop the MIDI inside and then hit play, and it will launch. So again, it's some people call it a DAW within a DAW. I mean, it basically is. So it can launch its own MIDI sequences and basically do DAW performances right inside of Serum. So this is great. I don't know if Serum has a standalone, but this will be great for people who just want to launch Serum. No other DAW, nothing in the background. They're live performing or something. They'll have these clips pre-made of MIDI, and the clips may represent a song, for example. So song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4, as if you're a DJ. And then you could basically just trigger these clips with a key switch, or just manually click on the actual thing, the key down here, to trigger it. So I could see this for live performers more than people who are in production, as far as music production. So again, Serum just does so much stuff that it's sweeping everything in the market right now. But the cool part about Serum is that they've built the most comprehensive interface out of all of the plugins. Okay, there are small differences between the top dogs, but Serum took the top spot. This is beyond S tier. This is like the top tier. Okay, so to take off the scale lock, you have to go back to the key mode and switch it back to a constant value. So I showed you guys so much stuff, and we didn't even get to like main sound design yet. That's why I said I can go through everything through Serum 2. But it's just so much to go through. So let's go to where it says multi-sample. And again, you could load what are called SFZs. So this is great news for sound designers. This will basically make contact libraries irrelevant, in my opinion. This will basically make a lot of developers move towards SFZ to deliver their plugins, because they could just load them right up in Serum, and Serum is the best interface for this anyway. Okay, so this is going to be huge for sound designers. By loading SFZs, you guys will have a ridiculous amount of sounds. The only thing is, and maybe this is a request and maybe I'm just ignorant of this, I would like to load multiple SFZs or a bank of SFZs, okay? Because that's my only hope and prayer for Serum 2, is that we get some type of way where we can load a bank of SFZs, or like a folder of SFZs. Because here in the menu, it says we can import a preset pack, but I still have no idea what a preset pack is just yet. Okay, so until that day, we will never know. But the cool part is you guys can load SFZs. Again, they're not SF2 sound font files. SF2 is the common thing you can find online right now, from like, there's thousands of sound fonts in SF2 format. This is SFZ, which is a very different format. I believe Cakewalk has something to do with it. It's like a Cakewalk format. Okay, so it's different than SF2 is my point, okay? So now you can load up realistic sounds inside of Serum. You could do it technically before by loading, just dragging the sample, in. Let me see if we can still do it that way. Let's go to our browser. Let's find some kind of audio sample. Let's go to my folder. Let's just drag in this 808. And you can still do it. So you can drag one shot into the wavetable position, and it will re-synthesize this using all these different modes to calculate a wavetable for that specific sound. That used to be the old way we would import audio into Serum, or we would drag the audio into the noise area. And I forget how we used to do this, but we used to be able to just drag it in. Oh, here we go. You could just drag it on the noise, and that would import the sound like that, the one shot that way. But now you can do so much more than just trigger a one shot. Okay, you could do multi-samples. If you don't know what a multi-sample is, it's the difference of me recording myself going, ah, and then playing that across the keyboard to where it's like, it sounds kind of weird when I play it across the keyboard. Or the difference, multi-samples would be me going, ooh, like I do every single thing a little bit differently. And when you play all that detail, it sounds more rich. So I could tell with this sample, this multi-sample, what they did was they have people going ah per note, and they did about what, 12 notes or so. So you get this really rich sound. And again, some cool things we could do. Let's initialize this so we can reset everything because we clicked on so much stuff. Let's go back to oscillator A, multi-sample. Let's go to factory here. Let's go to the ah. Let's do some weird stuff here. Let's turn on oscillator B, turn the level down. Let's go switch this to a what's called a sawtooth, a sine wave, pardon me, which is by turning this wavetable up, because that is the second frame of this wavetable. And then we could go to where it says warp. Okay, and we're going to do frequency modulation from the B oscillator. So this is stuff you could not do in probably any other synthesizer. I'm sure you could somewhere, maybe some really advanced one like Falcon you probably could, but nobody knew how to do it easily. So now you guys can modulate audio multi-samples using a synthetic approach. So this perfectly combines synth with acoustic sounds. Okay, so we can even go to the unison width here. You click these settings and pull that width in. You could also change out the style of distribution of the unison mode. I rarely mess with the settings here, but that's how you get to the width. So now we can create this really sinister sound. And now we got a video game type sound. Just like that. Now that transformed the choir into like a sinister sound. Next, let's go to the different style of oscillator called the sample mode. So this would be like your one-shot loader that most people use it for. So we're going to grab some Coop the Truth sounds here. Let's get his guitar. I always love his bass sounds. Let's drag a bass sample right inside the oscillator here. And we could do so much stuff in Serum that it's incredible. But what I'll show you guys is a couple things. So again, we could just play this one shot. This is how we used to do sampling, which is just play this one shot. And it sounds a little stretched once you get to the higher notes. Okay, it sounds a little thin and stretched once you get to those higher notes. And that's just a classical issue you have with sampling one note. And that's why multi-samples are so important. So for example, if I go back to multi-sample mode, click the factory preset, go to bass. They have a 5-string bass in here. So this has all of those detailed samples. It looks like they sampled what, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 7 notes, and they've done different velocities per note. So you get a different, a different realism where if I just drag that one shot in here, I don't get the same sound. You really hear it when you get to those higher notes. Now, on top of just dragging a one shot in, you could still create what's called looping. So this is a new feature, and basically you can set the loop points with these blue modes. So my favorite thing to do is forward backward looping. In this case, it's called forward reverse looping. So basically it will play the sample up to the loop point, and then it will loop back and forth in this blue area. Let me play a high note. So now it's going forward and backward. Okay, so you can select the loop end and loop start points right here. And I believe this is a crossfade feature. So here, this little X represents what's called a crossfade. Let me turn up this sound. So you guys hear that there's a little click in the sound because basically the sound isn't reaching what's called a node or a 0 point. So it creates a click. So what we're going to do is create a crossfade so it creates a gradient of volume and it smooths out that click basically. So now we have a whole different tone. Let's turn this down. Sorry, y'all, if I blew your speakers just then. And now we can create these Travis Scott type sounds. And then on top of this, we could add oscillator B. And let's switch this to a sine wave. Turn the level down so it doesn't output a volume. Let's go to warp mode and let's go to frequency modulation from B. And now we can create these super crazy. Let's raise it up an octave just so it sounds more like a keyboard. Now we just got to watch the clipping once we play a lot of notes together. Okay, so if I wanted to be fancy with this, I could add some unison and mess with the detune amount. So it's like, let's go up to 7 voices here. So we can do things with audio that we can only do with synthetic sounds. And that's the crazy part to wrap your head around in Serum. And now we got this like Travis Scott type vibe. I'm going to show you guys how it's sound design. Let's add an LFO to the fine tune pitch, change the range, pull that in, take off the BPM. Let's go to Hertz mode. And we could do cool stuff in the matrix too. Let me show you guys the secret. Go to the source, go to note on alternative, one of my favorite modes. It emulates the Dave Smith Instruments function called spread, I believe, on their Prophet 6 keyboard, which I love the sound. We're going to go to the destination, which is what the thing to be controlled. Let's go to oscillator A and let's select panning. So now we can have what's called a bipolar. If you only do one blue side, it's just one way, meaning it will only pan to the right in this case. If I do bipolar, it will bounce to the left and the right. Okay, so now when I hit a key, it plays either left or right. And that creates a very retro type sound. So now we can get this unique thing. And also too, in the matrix, they have presets for you guys. So if you click this drop down, you can actually create a vibrato using your pitch wheel, the mod wheel, I believe that says. And then we have the velocity. So basically click the drop down. So it does it for you. So now how hard I hit the key will determine how loud the sound actually is. Whereas by default, synths don't always have that. Okay, and I'm trying not to get into everything about everything here, but the velocity curve, we could pull this down. And let's make sure we're actually controlling. Okay, so we can add an attack just like we would any other sound on envelope 1, which controls our main amp. Let's hit control, left click that node. Now we're basically out of a bass sound. We're now creating these like super unique Travis Scott type sounds. And we could take this even further. Let's keep building on the sound. I didn't really talk about the warp modes here, but the warp modes are more detailed. You have distortion warp modes now. You have phase distortion. You have you can swap the warp modes, and you have 2 warp modes, which means not only can you just do one frequency modulation on a sound, you can even let's add some distortion here, some soft clip, add some harmonics to the sound. Let's swap out, and you could just arrow through to try out different warps on a sound. Okay, so we're listening to the harmonics of the sound here. We really liked, in the other tutorial we did the stomp box to create a guitar sound out of a bass or out of a guitar. Let's also activate what's called the filter. And remember, we have 2 filters, so let's activate filter 1 and filter 2. Let's give this a subtle attack time here, no sustain, a decay curvature. I'm liking the envelope screen. It's a lot more clean looking. And let's drag this over what's called the filter cutoff. Okay, so now we just need to make this a little more brassy by adding more time here. And making this curvature more linear. let's just select this range. I know I'm kind of moving fast here, but. So now we have that super Travis Scott vibe. Let's open this filter even more. And again, we can cycle between filter 1 and filter 2. So let's say, all right, let's automate this filter with an LFO. Let's grab this LFO. We're going to click here under the filter tab, and we're going to right click and go to mod source LFO, LFO1. So now LFO1 will move this filter amount according to our timing here. I forgot that's set to the vibrato as well. And let's make sure that this oscillator is being sent to the actual filter 1 and 2. So let's go to filter 1, turn that on, filter 2, make sure this is turned on. So now we have to create a difference between filter 1 and 2. Okay, so filter 1 I have it super filtered on the lows. Filter 2, we're gonna add like some kind of resonance and some drive so you could hear. Let's make sure the mod matrix also has this. For some reason, LFO, I don't see it moving, so I don't know if that's a glitch or I did something wrong. So let's just reset this. Not sure what happened there. Let's remove oscillators or modulators. Let's go to LFO2 and just modulate it with LFO2 because I can't audibly hear it. So there we go. So now I see it moving. It wasn't moving before, but I don't know what I pressed. So now it's cycling between filter 1 and filter 2. And now we could actually hear that difference. Okay, so now we're getting a super aggressive sound. Let's start. Okay, so now we have a sound that is just, I can't believe we made this out of a bass tone. So some other ways it says embed this sample into the preset when saving. So I believe we have to basically save the audio before we save the preset. Most people would just click here to save a preset and think that this one shot's gonna load up, but we have to tell Serum to package the sample as a one shot. And so this button represents that. That's for more sound designers. Anyhow, what we're gonna do is now right click where it says octave. Most people don't know this. I found this by accident. They have a new thing called mode. So we can switch this mode from semitones, which is like 12 semitones per octave, to harmonics. So now we're looking at the first harmonic. You could just basically focus on the frequency values. Like, okay, I have to explain fundamentals in harmonics. Let's say a fundamental frequency is 100 hertz. The second harmonic would be 2 times 100 hertz, which equals 200. The third harmonic would be 3 times 100 hertz, which would be 300. The fourth harmonic would be 4 times 100, which would be 400 hertz. So not every harmonic represents an octave or a semitone. Sometimes it could be a tritone interval. It could be an octave. It could be, whatever. So harmonically speaking, when you change these numbers, you're getting different intervals. So you're going to get a different sound basically. And then, I've never done this, but you can automate through that, which is interesting. I've never thought to, just an interesting thought to automate through the harmonic series of something. So now we get cool stuff like that. It's a pretty cool sound. Now, I would have to play really low octaves though to make that sound like something. So let's play this one. And again, I wouldn't do that every song. I'm just showing you guys what you can do. Okay, so I would remove that. So I would do that more for like things that have percussive transients, but you can also right click, go to mode and go to ratio. So this is like in Harmor, you have the ratio. This is, in my opinion, more suited for frequency modulation. This is why I would always go to a synth like FM8 to do frequency modulation, but now inside of Serum, you could basically just do it right here. This is more complicated to teach FM synthesis. I have a whole video about it. Nobody watches it because nobody wants to learn FM synthesis because it's very complicated. But what you could do is just, let's change the octave here, or the ratio of the modulator. And you can do hertz values, which offsets the tuning, which basically adds like a wobble. Okay, let's switch this back to normal mode. So this is, again, I wouldn't normally do it, but I know once you learn how to do it, you can do FM. See how it feels more FM-like with that like metallic sound, in my opinion. Okay, so we've done so much to the sound. There's so many things we've done that I kind of forgot where we were in making the sound. Okay, so nextly we can add oscillator 3. Now, what people don't know is if you right click where it says the oscillator, you can take off what's called pitch tracking. This is for people who want to use an LFO, or excuse me, an oscillator as an LFO. This gives you more of a Moog approach to sound design. So this will create a steady tuning depending on how you set the tuning here. It's only playing one note. It doesn't change, so it doesn't matter what note I play. This note will always play the same note. So I like to use it for modulation. I usually make a lower octave here, and it just moves stuff. Because it's so slow, it moves stuff. So we could change the shape. And you could also have this in the modulation matrix to assign to different things. So for example, let's select a wavetable. Let's turn this back on, and let's go to something that actually has a wavetable. So let's go to digital, something digital. So this has a wavetable. Okay, so what I can do, for example, is add an envelope over the wavetable so that it has motion. And then what we could do is make oscillator C, and the mod matrix control something. Let's control the filter, for example. Let's go to oscillator C. We want that to control what's called the cutoff filter of the first filter. I know this is convoluted, but basically this weird shape will control the movement of this thing on top of everything else that we have. So I can up the frequency so you guys can hear it. So let me take off the, let's bypass this currently, or just remove. Now you can hear that glitchy sound. That's because I have such a high octave of modulation on it. So basically you can modulate the filter with an oscillator of a unique shape. It's hard to hear though. Because it's moving so fast. Okay, there we go. So now you get these really unique. So most people don't talk about filter modulation, but let me switch out the wavetable. Let's also go the other way. So again, you would have to really fine tune this to make it sound crazy good. But it's possible, okay? This one's cool. Okay, so if we pull back the resonance a little bit, we have some drive in here. So we already took that basic bass sound into sounding like this monstrous thing. So let's move a little bit, because I'm going through every little thing about everything, but I'm realizing there's so much to teach that I have to show you guys real world use cases. Let's go to what's called the mixer. They now have a mixer in here where we can send different oscillators to different things. Whereas before, everything was kind of hard routed to one effects chain, from my understanding. So now we can separate the sounds basically to be edited. So let's say this sound here is too loud. I could just turn down oscillator A so that we're not clipping. So you just left click and drag. So now I don't have to worry about my main output clipping, because it will change the audio sometimes when you clip. See how we're clipping now? So I have to make sure oscillator A. All right, now let's go to where it says effects, and I'll show you guys. They have the main output, which is like the effects over everything. And then you have what are called buses. So think of a bus like, you know, the thing that gathers things. Again, as if oscillators were kids going onto a bus. Same thing here. So let's go to our effects tab. And to route this stuff, basically you go to the mixer, or you can also do it from this drop down. Okay, you click this drop down and you can say, okay, I want the first sound to go through to bus 1. What is bus 1? Okay, under the effects, we can go to bus 1 and we can add some effects. So I want to have chorus on this sound at 100% mix level. And I want to have delay and reverb. Okay, now if I go back to the main oscillator, click this drop down, I can send a duplicate of this oscillator to a bus. So it's a duplicate of the sound. And it's being processed through this chain of things. And then I could blend these chains of things back into the original sound, basically. Okay, so let's say I have it like this. Okay, so now it's more depth and cleanliness, because now the effects aren't affecting the even though these are turned off. Now the effects are only affecting one sound. But if I did have the output, let's do the sine wave. Well, it's hard to tell what the sine wave because it's so stable. But basically, these other oscillators are not affected by the effects. That's the short answer. The effects are now separated. And if I want less of that effect, I can then pull the bus level back. Again, the bus just means we're sending a duplicate of this oscillator to this group or this bus. I can pull it down so that there is no duplicate. And we could even automate this, which is even more insane. You could automate the bus amount. Again, Serum is just so ridiculous that it's crazy. So, and it's the best interface for this. Let's go to LFO1. So now the LFO will determine how much of the sound is sent to this effects chain. I don't know if it means the trigger amount or the ongoing amount. Let's take off some of the filter because it's kind of muffling the sound. We have so many modulators on the filter, I don't know where to begin. I guess the sound is just naturally. Okay, that's just the sound, never mind. Okay, so now let's see. I don't know if this is true, but you can also right click the sample and it does auto slicing. So I believe somebody showed us on Twitter. You could basically use this like slice X with auto slicing. I don't know how this works. I assume it's based on keys. Okay, so yeah, it is. So I'm playing a certain, so you see how this says C#1 and this tiny slice says C1. So chop this sample up into different parts. So if I were to be crazy and drag in like an actual sample from a song, let me see if I can find some kind of loop. Let's drag in a Do Sounds loop. Shout out to Drew from a Do Sounds. Let's drag his future stuff. And let's go to melody loops and let's drag this one. So let's drag that into the sample. And now what it does, if you right click and go to slice auto mode, you could also do manual slicing, which I'm interested to know how that works. I guess you just left click and just drag. Okay, so it's a little tedious. So I would do auto slicing, and basically you can play whatever you hover your mouse over, play that note, and it will trigger that part of the sample. So we have so many modulators. Let me turn some stuff off. Trying to figure out what that last sound is. Oh, that's right. This was the, okay. So anyway, how? So now I'm choosing different parts of the sample based on which note I play on my actual keyboard. So again, this makes it almost like Fruity Slicer or Slice X. And then we still have our loop points, which is going to be interesting. So then it will go forward and backward. Let's pick a different loop that has more changes in it. Let's do something like this. So I have this pitched up in octaves, pull it back. So now you guys can flip loops inside of Serum, bro. This is so insane. Who needs arcade when you have this? I was wondering why it sounded so crazy. We had unison on. Forgot about that. So there's so many effects we turned on. I have to turn this stuff off. Man, oh man, I could be here all day doing all this stuff. This is truly insane, y'all. I just want y'all to understand how insane we have it right now. And for those who have Serum, it was a free update. If you had Serum 1, you got a free update to Serum 2, which is also crazy insane to believe. I was willing to pay for a whole new Serum, and they gave us the thing for free. So I kind of forgot what I all had set here. We did so much stuff to the sample that I forgot where we even left off. So I'm just going to reset, go to menu and initialize preset. We started mangling so many things. Okay, so we didn't even cover everything yet. So let's go to the oscillator type. Let's go back to multi-sample. We did that. We did sample. We didn't do granular yet. So this is also what kind of turns this into a pigments in a way, because people were using pigments and current and all these other plugins to create granular smears of a sound. So for example, if you had the Coop the Truth pack, for example, shout out to Coop the Truth, grab his one shot pack, grab his I like his bass sounds the most and his guitar. So basically you could chop up this sound into micro pieces. And the way we do that is, let me find so we're on granular mode. We need to turn on what's called the direction mode so that it has a way to, so now you could actually hear the effect. And then the density is how many chops that we hear distributed, and then length is how much they chop up the audio in length of time. So the longer the length, the more you're going to hear the stutters. The shorter the length, the more granular. And density is almost like the gaps in between. And then scanning is where it chooses to chop in the sample. So it is it can get a little convoluted. My favorite thing to do is just keep these on random. So random lengths of notes and then random panning so that it's like this smeary sound. And then you can also detune these. Like, what is this sound? This is from a bass sound, y'all. So I will say granular is a little bit trickier to get a sound from, but good starting points are plucked instruments and pianos. I don't think I have a piano one shot anywhere. Let me see if I can find. Let's do something like this. Okay, and let's pull this down an octave. So this is great for like movie stuff too. Let's add some unison to widen it out. Now we're getting big sounds, and you could also do what's called looping, the same way we did with the sampler. We could do forward, backward looping here, which is my favorite. And then add that crossfade so there's no clicks, even though you can't really hear clicks as much in granular. Now we're having a lot of, now that clicking noise is just from the way I chopped it. Now I'm on a pretty good a pretty good computer here, and the CPU is going nuts with this. So I will say this feature tends to be a little heavy. I'm on a Mac Mini M4 Pro, so make sure my audio interface is actually okay. That's could also be the issue there. I was wondering why my voice sounded weird. Okay, but there's still little clicks, and that could be from one of these knobs. Whoa, okay. Gotta be careful with this one. Because remember, it's chopping up the audio into new pieces. Whoa, okay. So this could get messy fast. Okay, so any clicks you hear again are part of my process not being refined to the perfect style. But we are high CPU, so for that reason I'm gonna skip this one. But there are factory sounds in here, so we can just load up some factory stuff. So we have some dope sounds. Again, granular is not my bag really. Let's try. We could also chop up drums and drum loops. It's another kind of crazy way to use granular. So granular, I mean, we could be here all day because it literally is going into the granular things about audio, which is almost too much to cover. So for that reason, I'm going to just say that that is my demonstration of granular. Nextly, we have spectral mode, and most people don't know on the right side, you have a filter of harmonics. So this is a harmonic view of audio, and you could get rid of the lows, for example. Let's go to a different sound like a piano. And let's say you don't want the lows or the fundamental frequencies, you could just, in the values in the top left of FL, and now you could chisel that out. It's basically a high pass filter, but you're targeting what are called harmonics, which is the same thing as a high pass filter, basically. And then again, you could loop the spectrum and then forward, backward. So there's so many loop modes here. Okay, so let's add some effects. Let's do, what do we have before? Chorus, delay, reverb. Let's turn these all the way up to 100 because we're going to blend this in. Go to the top left. Let's add that in the bus. Okay, let's add that oscillator. B, turn off the level here. Switch it to a sine wave. We're going to go from here, warp mode, FM from oscillator B to give it some more detailed tone. It's kind of hard to hear. Let me change the loop area. That'd be crazy if you can modulate the loop area. If that's a thing, then this is literally going to be the most insane synth on the planet. So here we have, let's give it some unison to make it more Travis Scottish. And here you hear that clicking coming in. I guess it's my computer just freaking out. But you can push Serum really hard. Some people were asking about CPU. You could push this one really hard without going crazy with it. Okay, I could be on that all day. So that's spectral mode. So there's so much in Serum. Like I said, guys, this is like 6 plugins in one. This is like the master of plugins right now. It's beyond the top tier of plugins. There is so much to show. You can also click here for the spectral mode, and it looks like you could draw or import waveforms in. So let's take off our filter, see what this does. Okay, so we can basically adjust the gain per the spectrum. So I could have the highs go into this more, it looks like. Left click to add a node. So that's what it seems to be doing, is basically just like an EQ curvature. I could be wrong about the definition, but I'm just using my common sense here. And then we can move that. We can even automate the tilt of the EQ. This is insane. So, I mean, there's so much. There is so much to go through. In the mix level. So you could basically have the highs pump, for example, if that's what you wanted on your sound. So let's add an LFO so you guys can hear. So it's going like wow, wow. But it's not a filter. It is a filter, but it's like, it doesn't feel like a filter. Oh. Hear that subtle texture where it's like whoosh, whoosh. So again, there's so many things we could do in Serum. I'm just like getting exhausted trying to teach you guys how much stuff we could do in here. I didn't cover macros yet, but I showed you guys that. I showed you guys, you can click here. If you switch this back to Wavetable mode, you can click this pencil tool. Up top here, this is where you can control the harmonics of a sound. So this is the first fundamental frequency, and this creates a sine wave all the time. Now that doesn't sound like a sine wave because we have so much modulation, but you could add what's called the second harmonic, third harmonic, fourth harmonic, on and on and on. And we can get rid of harmonics. And I believe the bottom area here is phase. It says repeat over here. But I always thought that to be phase. Okay, so it looks like phase to me. So if you move this area here at the bottom, you can see the sine wave is moving in its position. So that would be called phase. How, like, where does the sine wave start in its shape? So that's called phase. So this bottom area is the phase of each harmonic, and the top part is the volume of the harmonic. Even this sounds kind of dope. I don't know why it sounds so lasery though. I don't know what there we go. All right. So guys, I mean, we're barely touching the surface. We have frequency modulation that's just super well done to where it makes you think of different ways to modulate stuff. Okay, let me follow my list here. We have warp modes. We covered some of those. Arpeggiator, we covered that. The clip mode, transpose, scale lock, oscillator mapping, we covered that. We didn't cover chaos filters. So I was always like in the mod matrix looking for the chaos. Okay, so where they put it is under what's called the LFO. If you click here, go to chaos. And this is basically just, I don't even know what to call this. Okay, but basically you can modulate stuff with this. So the X amount you can modulate with stuff and the Y amount. So let's do the X amount and let's just drag it over like the frequency modulation, for example, and give it a range. So now if you guys see, let me go to the mod matrix. Okay, it's just chaos, it doesn't move in one defined way. It kind of moves just in different ways over time. Okay, so that's the cool part about chaos. Okay, so you get these really unique non-repeating type sounds, and that's what the chaos filter is for. They have two different ones. One is called the Rossler, one's called the Lorenz. Now also too, somewhere in here I clicked, you can do what's called path. Okay, so if we click on path mode, you can create these weird shapes. You just left click and kind of just create this weird shape. And I don't know how it reads these values, but I don't know how it reads it. It must create its own length of time. I don't know how it does it. I don't know the math behind this, but basically it just goes around the circle, or you could do non-circle. I don't know how to get rid of points either. So let me just see, remove selected point. You right click. So I don't know how to reset it, but basically if you do the one that's not a circle, you can have it to where it's open-ended and it figures out a way to go through these. Let's see if we can reset this. Now, normally they have a drop down. So let's go to factory, initialize. Let's go to path, non-circular, and then you can left click and just create this weird shape. And it knows like where to start and where to end. I don't know how this works, y'all. I'm just gonna call it mystery. So that sounds pretty dope. Let's give this some mod matrix effects here. Let's go to our, let's do, let's say you want to even have the LFO1, which is that kind of chaotic filter, control the oscillation of A. Now everything's kind of moving in the same general direction. Okay, so now we're getting into the crazy world. So infinite creativity in this plugin so far. Let's talk about macros. I didn't talk about macros just yet and how to save some of these. Okay, so let's say, before we get to macros, let's go to where it says menu and let's resample to oscillator A. So basically it takes the sound that we just created and creates what's called a wavetable that we can now treat as if it's an oscillator. And now we can basically modulate an already modulated sound. So it gets really crazy. This is normally done on bass. So let's take off the LFO over let's go to the, I know we're getting into the weeds about stuff. Let's have envelope 3 control the FM amount. And let's create like a, Type of garage type sounding bass. So let's say you like the sound, but the reverb's too long tail. You can actually go to the size and the mix level of the reverb and automate this. So this could be automated with the envelope 3. This is why I said Serum goes to so many layers. So basically you can have a reverb and then it fades based on envelope 3. Let's exaggerate. Because the delay is pretty heavy, it's hard to really tell about the reverb, but now the reverb is a gated reverb and not just this long tail reverb. Okay, I mean, there's 1,000 things we could do from here, y'all. Let's reset actually, let's not reset. Let's go to macros. And what we can do with the macro, it's kind of hard to comprehend it until you realize what a macro does. A macro is just a point that modulates other stuff in different ranges. So if you want to use one knob to control different ranges of stuff. So for example, let's say you want the FM8 to turn up to that max amount, and you're going to drag the macro to also mess with the fine tune pitch, but you want this to be this range, which is a different range. And you also want it to control maybe the level. Okay, and then you want it to be in that range, and you want this to control, I'm just left clicking to drag the wavetable position, and you only want it in this range. So now I can move one knob and it controls all of those ranges differently. Okay, so that's basically what a macro is. It controls different things at different ranges. Let's take off the wavetable one because that one makes it too lasery sounding. And you can even have a mod source on a macro. That's why I said this gets so meta. Let's go to LFO2. So now I can have LFO2 control the macro amount, which controls all those other things at different ranges, which gives you a different level of control. But again, the whole point of a macro is just, again, to have, how do we remove? Boom. You could also like link it to your mod wheel, do different things like that. Also, let's go to the mod matrix. Let's have envelope 3 control the effects and the delay mix level or wet level so that it's not so. I guess it said, oh, you know what? I forgot to give it a range. So now the delay won't just ring out. So now envelope 3 controls a lot of effects. And now you can kind of truncate a bunch of effects. And again, what can we do with this? We can now use oscillator mapping. Let's turn on the oscillator here. Let's go to -2. Let's go to oscillator mapping. And we only want this to trigger from the C octave and below. So now the sub oscillator, let me make sure I turn it on. And again, we can turn our, man, I said that so fast. And again, we could turn our filter on with the sub oscillator going through that, so it's not as bitey. Man, Serum is so amazing. Let's turn on mono mode, which means one note played at a time. To add another oscillator, because now we have 4 really oscillators. Let's do semitone 7, which is our perfect 5th. Let's also give envelope 3. So notice when I play that it's not playing the sub because we're not playing that key range. Let's go to the effects here. And let's say we want the entire sound affected. Let's go to main. Let's go to compressor here. Let's go to multiband mode. We didn't even touch the effects. Man, there's so much to talk about in Serum. Okay, and then we want, man, I know I'm moving quick here. Let's go to oscillator oscillator C. And then we want this to go to bus 1. Let's add some more voices here. And again, the cool part is now the effects are truncated based on envelope 3. So when I let it go, it stops the reverb and the delay. I'm gonna save that one because that was kind of hard. So to save it, you could just type in your name right there and then type in what it is. Let's just call it funk. Save that thing and let's save it into a folder of, let's create a new folder called funk. And I'm gonna call that, I don't even know, is that a pluck? I guess a pluck, funk pluck. There we go. And that's how you save presets. Now, I should have said this way in the beginning of the video, but they have a whole preset library if you click this tab. And now you have a whole like selection of presets here. So now you can imagine sound designers, you could just load up their pack. I assume this is where you can load up your preset packs. Again, I haven't messed with the preset pack thing yet, but imagine sound designers like myself come out with preset packs. You guys just load up things with multi-samples and all complex things. It's all tagged for you, categorized, put in its own folder so you can't lose it. Again, there's so many crazy things about Serum. This video is probably an hour. Let me see how long we've been filming so far. This video is an hour long. I did not even want it to be this long. Okay, and it looks like you can arrow through presets too. So they have really realistic sounds here. Okay, they have guitar stuff. Man, it's just, what else is there to say? Just go through the presets. You can see how it's built. This is not only one multi-sample, but 3 multi-sample layers. I didn't even think to do that. 3 multi-sample layers. Insanity. You have the harmonics, the plucking, and the regular tone. And you have vinyl crackle. This is nuts. Wait till you guys see the sound packs that sound designers are going to create. You're going to be like, why would you ever use any other synthesizer on the market? Once the sound designers get their hands in this. Again, I think I'm gonna stop here because we covered pretty much everything there is to cover as far as like main things. I'm sure there's a million things I did not cover. If you guys want to see anything in particular, just leave it in the comments below. I didn't even know we were going for an hour, but there's so much stuff in here, y'all. I think I'm just gonna have to do another video of just sound designing in here, just watching me sound design, because that's the only way to really teach you guys the nuances. I think I'll do that for the next video. Thank you guys. Subscribe if you're new. Go to busyworksbeats.com/premium to learn how to sound design. Peace out, guys.